Olson from North Dakota State University is our analyst this week. We talked with Frayne on Wednesday morning about export volatility and the annual wheat tour to the south. But we started in North Dakota, where spring planting is well ahead of last year. The state has put 66% of the crop in the ground compared to 1% a year ago while battling floods.
So far we've had a very nice spring. We had basically an open winter. Farmers have been making a lot of really good progress on planting. When you look at the entire spring wheat crop, we're almost 3/4 of the way through planting progress. In North Dakota, we're about 2/3 of the way through the planting process. So we're making really, really good progress compared to last year. Again, last year was a very tough year for us, and we had a lot of planting delays. As you move a little bit further north into Canada, they're also well ahead of where they were last year. They're just starting the planting progress right now, so we'll have to watch that one as we move forward in time.
And one of the other things that's going on across the country is the wheat tour, and they were bordering Nebraska on Tuesday. So they're seeing good conditions, and we're going to have what looks to be a pretty good crop frame.
Yeah, when you compare it to last year, it's looking much better than we saw last year at this time. There are areas they're finding some pockets of disease pressure, as well as some moisture stress. So there are going to be areas that may not have quite the yield they were hoping for, but in general, when you look at the winter wheat crop and the conditions reported that we've had and the tour reports we're getting now on yield estimates, it's looking as though the winter wheat crop is going to come in much better than it did last year.
And certainly we expected some of those weather concerns as we looked at it a few months ago with drought concerns.
Yep. And again, you get into the southern plains, into the Texas, Oklahoma panhandle, there's still areas that are having some drought problems. But the word we're getting out of the crop tour in Kansas, as well as eastern Colorado and parts of southern Nebraska, it looks as though those areas are going to have good enough yields they'll offset any kind of potential losses that are in the Texas, Oklahoma area.
Which means that we need somewhere to go with all this wheat, and the chart that we're seeing right now shows where the wheat is going and the volatility in it. And explain to me what we're seeing here and why we're seeing the lines differ like they do.
Okay, USDA, when they report wheat usage, kind of has 4 general categories, and I want to focus in on 2 main categories. One of them is the food usage, which is really used domestic use for flour milling into the flour for bread products, as well as semolina for pasta. And if you look at the lines, the food usage, domestic usage, tends to be very stable. We use about the same amount in our flour products every year, whether the prices are high or prices are low. The one number, or the one usage that really bounces around considerably, is the exports number. And as you can see, we have, it looks like they cycle back and forth between having very strong exports and very weak exports. And essentially what's going on is, if we have very good international demand, if there's good, strong usage levels internationally, we're able to export our wheat. Wheat prices tend to be very strong. But in those years where either our competitors have very large crops and there's a large supply of wheat on the world market, or if there's some problems in international consumption, then we have a hard time selling our wheat internationally, and wheat prices really suffer because of that, because the U.S. tends to be one of the residual suppliers. We have what everybody needs, but it costs a little bit more money to get it. And so we tend to be lowest on the list when it comes to who buys wheat. And as a result, and again, I know we've talked about this before on the program, we tend to spend a lot of time talking about what's happening internationally and looking at some of our competing producers of wheat in the world to see what's happening there as an indication.
And how do you plan around that volatility that we're seeing, Frayne? As you mentioned, that line is drastically different than the other 3. So how do producers plan and market around that volatility?
Well, that becomes a real challenge, and I guess the best piece of advice I have is to just try and stay current with the information and pay attention to what's happening. And again, it becomes a little bit more difficult in the wheat market because we are talking about a world wheat demand, and the wheat market is so liquid on the international stage. So we not only have to follow what's happening here in the United States, we also have to follow what's happening in Canada and Australia and Europe, as well as the Black Sea region, because again, that Black Sea region is a major export competitor for us.
All right, what are you seeing right now? You mentioned international demand. What are we seeing for the next few months? Weather concerns factored in.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. If there's a weather concern or a problem internationally, the U.S. wheat market will respond to that. And there are a couple areas that we do need to keep our eyes on right now. It sounds as though the European wheat crop is looking a little bit better shape than it was earlier. They've been able to get some rains, although there are still some concerns in France. The other thing now is the Black Sea region, the winter wheat crop there has broken dormancy. There are some dry conditions starting to appear in parts of the Ukraine and southern Russia. We're going to have to keep our eyes on that because, of course, that's what sparked the big wheat prices that we had 2 years ago.